I really am curious, going a little bit deeper on this discipline aspect, because we've talked about this on the podcast before. I was whooped as a kid, right?
So
I come from Nigerian culture, and
Yes, sir.
even back in Nigeria, in school, teachers are hitting the kids with canes.
Yeah.
It's normal,
Yeah.
right? And all the African kids I know, it's normal.
Yeah.
But then you're raised that way. I look back on it. I don't have trauma. My mom wasn't doing it out of anger. He was doing it because that's what discipline was. You talk back, you do some stupid shit. Here's the belt. That's normal.
Right.
And I had a talk with my girlfriend because she was never spanked. She ended up great, and we were talking back and forth. We're like, I had a hard time thinking about I don't want to ever discipline my kid when I have one, or spank my kid when I have one, but I feel like if that kid's like me, but I need I was an asshole, you know what I mean?
Totally.
So I'm really curious, because you probably have a lot of parents that come to you with those types of questions. What are your thoughts on that? I don't think that kids have to be spanked.
Yeah.
That's a very American sentiment, but I think it's true. But how can somebody who has gone through that,
they gotta retrain the brain.
Retrain the
100%, man. So and again, I was whooped too.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, my dad was a hardcore, getting stabbed at work and having some he was a rough dude. So we got whooped, and that's a nice way to say it. But it transferred over, and I was kind of like, okay, well, I'm not necessarily going to do that either, man, because I know that sometimes that was a little too much. But then I had my first, and I found myself, I get mad and I pop her on the butt, and she's the one that kind of came to me and was just like, can you stop doing that? And it was, little. And I was just like, and this is my little girl, you know what I mean? So, first and foremost, when we're talking about all these parenting things, and I'm talking about from experience of, first of all, being the most unperfect, parent on the planet. I want people to, there's no such thing as a perfect parent, but you should always strive to be the perfect parent. Always. Standards should always remain perfection. Yeah. Right. And so she's the one that kind of came to me on that. And I just sit there and go, okay, all right, so what do we do instead? And it was, so once we kind of switched over, and it was just like, look, very calm correction and natural consequence and clear boundaries. And as much as we could get ahead of the game of, okay, we wanted to be proactive, not just reactive. So we wanted to be proactive on those, kind of the family values of look, this is what we expect. And we didn't have the rules at that point, but it's like, okay, this is what we expect. This is the expectation of how you're going to behave. This is the expectation of what this looks like in this different situation, trying to give her as much information up front as possible. And if you miss the mark on that, well, the natural consequence is going to be this. And they understand that if you're consistent with it. Every time she misses that mark, you have that natural, calm correction. Every time she hits the mark, you praise them like a mother. You over-exaggerate the qualities that you want to see. And that starts to build a consistent understanding at that young age of, ooh, this is the way it's supposed to look. Yeah. Right? And so I use an example, I think, at that talk of my 6-year-old. There's my little guy, he's an aggressive little guy, too, right? For sure. But he's awesome, man. He's perfect. And he was outside playing on the farm, and he was outside doing his thing. And I walked by his room, and his room looked like somebody had just gone in there and beat it to shit, right? And so there's stuff everywhere. And so I'm like, hey, man. But I've been so consistent with it. All I had to do was walk outside. I'm like, Loudon, come here. I'm like, hey, man. I walked by your room. What do you think I saw? He's like, ooh, there's toys everywhere. I'm like, yep. I'm like, okay, so if you want freedom in this house, what do you have to have first? This is responsibility. Right. Responsibility comes before freedom. Right now you're outside playing, so you're exhibiting your freedom. But what should come first? It's that responsibility. Yep, you bet. So what do you need to do? I need to go clean up my stuff. Yep, cool. And he goes and cleans up his stuff. Very calm. I didn't fight. He didn't fight. There's no bad blood. And he goes and does what needs to be done. The very next day, he's out doing the same thing. I can get pissed and go out there and be like, what the? I can go, or I went back out and went, Loudon, we talked about this yesterday. Oh my gosh, yep, and runs in. A couple of days after that, it's kind of it's not even really a problem, right? And so I didn't have to get the fights, I didn't have to get the emotions, I didn't have to get the spankings. Likewise, he was walking out, around the same time, we're walking out to the garden, and he starts to go through this little gate, and he stopped, and he goes, whoops, and he holds the gate open, and he goes, ladies first. And he lets his two older sisters and he lets my wife go through, lets his mom go through, right? So I went and I grabbed him and I picked him up and I'm like, hey, I need you to listen to me right now. That's what a good man does right there. That was a gentlemanly thing to do. You just let your sisters go first. You let your mom go first. Man, I'm so proud of you because you're a good man. And I put him down and let him go. I'm consistent on both of those now. And that makes all the difference, right? Praising, inspirationally, when they do that, like over the top, like that's the character right there. And then calmly correcting. If you really want to put gasoline on that fire, you make sure they can hold you accountable when you mess up too. And then you are building respect like nothing else. And everything just turns into this adult conversation. So the other day when I had my socks and I had taken them off because I had a bunch of stickers in them from the farm, and I was like, oh shit, I'm sitting on the couch for a second. I took them off and I set them on the floor, and he comes in, he's like, Dad, we don't just put our socks on the floor. And I can be, hey, I'm the father. I can be that asshole. I can do that and create a freaking barrier between myself and my kid. Or I can go, oh my gosh, man, thank you for holding me accountable, because that's exactly what I need. So I got my ass up and picked up my socks and went and put them in the dirty clothes. Then it's like, all right, cool. All they want is a little bit of respect. They want to know, they want boundaries. They crave those boundaries, and they want to know that you respect them as an individual as well, and that you hold very high standards. But most importantly, they want to see that you're holding those high standards for yourself. Leading by, the first and best thing a parent can do is to get their own shit together.
Power Project fam, this episode is brought to you by Vivo Barefoot Shoes. We've been wearing these shoes for almost a year now. They're flexible. They have a wide toe box. They allow your feet to get connected to the ground, and they will make your feet stronger. And they don't look like shit like a lot of these other barefoot shoes. Andrew, how can they get them?
For the best barefoot shoes on the planet, and they also look really, really good, head over to vivobarefoot.com/powerproject. At checkout, enter promo code PowerProject20 to save 20% off. Again, vivobarefoot.com/powerproject, promo code PowerProject20 to save 20% off. Links to them down in the description, as well as the podcast show notes. Let's go ahead and get back to this podcast. Yeah, I'm curious your take on, because I had said something on Instagram about like how I will use every opportunity to tell my kids they're amazing. Just like how you're saying, like you like went over the top, like you praised them a lot. But I think, was it Carol Dweck's book about
mindset?
Mindset, yeah. Like what? I'm
Carol's
curious about your thoughts on like praising too much, maybe.
You tie it to something, right? If you just, because parents are in this whole thing, and it's like an affirmation, right? Where you just stand in the mirror and you're like, hey, you're the best. Everybody likes you. That's horseshit. Maybe you suck, and maybe nobody likes you. You can't just say it. You can't just say it and have it be true. There's got to be tied to something, right? So I'm all for that, but I wouldn't just, blanket you're amazing for everything. Starts to just kill what that even means. But like when Loudon opened that gate, I praised that specific thing. You were a gentleman the way you did that, right? He started doing Ninja Warrior. There's a Ninja Warrior course thing out there, and he started doing all that stuff. And when he got done, I was just like, man, the way, and he's badass at it. He was great, but I'm not going to just blow smoke. Dude, no, I said, dude, your effort and the way you just poured in the whole time, the way when you fell, that time that you fell off of that, you ran over, you got back up, right? I'm tying it to a specific quality and characteristic that never gets old. If you're just saying it to say it, you're not building anything. If anything, you're building entitlement.
You're like, Loud, let me break it down for you. You're pretty good at that, but there's probably another kid who's a little bit better, a little bit faster.
You bet.
A little bit stronger, who's practicing a little bit more.
You bet. You bet. Well, dude, and he'll see that though too. He'll see it. They'll see that, and don't be afraid to throw that either, dude. Yeah, you're good at swinging on the monkey bars, but did you see what that girl was doing, dude?
She's hanging upside down.
She's hanging us, yeah, for sure. Well, one-handed for a lot longer than you, so get your shit together. So all those, but they, again, you've got that kind of relationship built. We can have those kind of conversations, and it's not emotionally driven.
Yeah, I think I'm not a parent. So I think this is an interesting thing. But the really, I think the big thing and what I know as you're saying, there's when it comes to my culture, like number one, African culture, kids don't speak back to their parents. There's a lot of respect. Let's just say one thing
for sure.
African kids and teenagers, like there's a huge amount of reverence and respect that children have for adults, parents, etc.
You bet.
But I do think that an aspect where I'm just like, wow, that's a very interesting thing, where it's maybe for some people it's going to be hard for them to get behind, is like when your child has an opinion on what you do, like loud and seeing your socks on the ground and be like, Dad, like me, I'd been like, my mom would have been like, what? Yeah, my socks are right?
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
It's interesting, but it's not an opinion if you've already made it in your house a specific, here's what we do and here's what we don't do. And when I say we, I actually mean we. Parents usually parent from a very hypocritical place. We are very willing to point the finger without holding ourselves to that same standard, right? And again, this is coming from me having made all of the mistakes you can make on that, especially with my first kid. That's why your first kid's always your therapy kid, right? Because you're going to mess them up at some point. So,
real quick, a friend of mine,
just so you know,
a friend of mine that had his daughter told me, Nsima, you better get all your shit in line before you have kids, because they will expose all of your flaws.
Oh, they expose everything. You bet. Quickly. So freaking true. So true, man. So wait, what were we saying on that? The opinion. Yeah. So, but that's not an opinion, because we have established that this is what we do and this is what we don't do, and we stay consistent. If you say this is what we do and this is what we don't do, but sometimes you kind of let it go, they don't believe you. If you say this is what we do and this is what we don't do, but you're not a part of that, they don't believe you. That's what's different. If you're consistent about it, then it is what it is. So it's not being and he was very, very respectful. It was just, Dad, we don't do this. And it just allows me to have that exact same conversation. Dad, don't, I came in it wasn't too long. I came in the kitchen and was complaining about something. And my girls, Dad, rule number 6, man, it's no complaining. Fix it. Like, what's your solution on this? I needed the adult. They were just like, Dad, you're complaining. Like, what are you going to do about that? You don't want to complain. You don't want to be in that kind of emotional state. And that's a normal conversation for us, focusing on that, touching on it every week, checking on those rules. How is everybody doing around that? So when that's the case, it's just you kind of have these other adults in the room that are helping hold you accountable. They help me be on my game with everything. With the way I treat my wife, with the way I treat them, with the way I treat myself, with the way I just talk about life in general, with the way I handle work. Like, we're all a team that way.
I think hitting, going back to that topic, is an inability to communicate. I think maybe for some people, I know, like in my family history, both of my grandparents had a lot of children. Yeah. And so, of course, there was some hitting going on in both those households. Probably just because, like, I don't know, we got 10 kids and a lot of kids are flying around, and this kid needs a swat in the butt because he can't hit the other kid with his Tonka truck or whatever.
Yeah.
But I always think that any sort of violence, and even though hitting a child may not be looked at as violence, I view it as violence. I think that any form of hitting is an inability to communicate.
I think that's
what it is that you're trying to really convey. Because could you say it? Like, could you talk it out? Is there a way? And somebody might be like, well, the kid's 3. How the hell am I going to communicate with a 3-year-old? But is hitting them like is that a good option?
It's the lazy way to go. And the reality is and I love the timing of this too. And I love, Courtney, I love you. I love you very much. It's my sister. And she was over last night at my mom's, and she's got a 2-year-old, my little nephew, and he's freaking awesome, but he was losing his stuff. And it's a kind of a normal thing. And she was getting super fired up. And we talked about this last night. She's like, God, what do I do? Like, your kids are never like this. What do I do? And I just kind of went, and she's like, no, I'm serious. I'm asking you, what do I do? Yeah. Like, what is going on
Get madder and see how that works.
And that's what, and I said, do you really want the honest answer? She's like, yeah. I'm like, well, this is your fault. This is you. This is you having 2 years to build a relationship with him and build consistency with him, and you haven't built it. So now you can just get super pissed and go for, like you said, the quick, lazy answer is, I'm going to beat you into submission and see how that works out for a long tail relationship and mindset. Or I can go, okay, I've been kind of missing the boat for 2 years, and you can start to put the time in now. It's never too late to change. Again, no perfect parents, But the sooner you can get your stuff figured out and start to be consistent and hold yourself to that higher standard too, and all those things we're talking about, the better. I agree. I think that it's the lazy, quick way to go. And I get it. When you got 10 kids, 15 kids, 38 kids, it's like, I don't even know which one, it's like whatever I can do, man. But I think it's the lazy way to go.
So Power Project family, I hope you enjoyed this clip. We are on Discord and Reddit. We're trying to talk to you guys and build a community down there. So the links are in the bio. But remember, like, comment, subscribe, share this out with people so you can share the wealth of health. As cheesy as that fucking sounds. Peace.